Traveling to a different country can be stressful, and there are so many things to worry about beforehand. Here are 10 things you need to know when going to Japan to help make your trip a little less stressful, and I guarantee that some of these will blow your mind.
The next station is Tokyo.
Hey guys, Hwang here, and today we are going to look at 10 things that you need to know before going to Japan. Let's dive into it. Starting off with number 10. If you are from the US, you will be overjoyed to hear about Japanese tipping culture. Mainly that there is none. You can't even begin to put into words the joy that you feel when paying the bill and not having to leave a tip. In fact, it can be considered rude and offensive if you try to leave a tip. I've heard stories about waitstaff running after guests to give them the tip back, or saying that they forgot their money or something. Instead of trying to tip restaurant workers, you can thank them by saying thank you in Japanese, or arigato, or more formally, arigato gozaimasu. This, combined with a slight bow, is considered formal and respectful and shows your appreciation. Bowing is pretty normal in Japanese culture and is used to show respect and humility when greeting or thanking someone. And you will most likely see people in Japan doing this to each other and to you, so it's respectful to bow back. The degree of the bow is like more formal, so there's like meme videos of people that are just like straight up like bowing. They're like on the floor and they're just like going nuts. It's pretty hilarious actually, but even just a slight bow is respectful enough for most cases. On to number 9, we have train etiquette. This was one of the most mind-boggling things for me being in Japan, because I didn't realize this before, and it was quite a culture shock. When you're on the train, it's quiet, and I mean dead silent. In Japan, the cultural norm is to respect others in public spaces and to keep your voice down, and all of it comes to the highest levels of respect inside the train cars. Be respectful of others, don't talk loudly, and let people get off the train before getting on. Most train stations have markings on the ground for people waiting for the train, usually toward the sides of the door where you wait, and the middle area is open for people who are exiting the train. So then, you let them exit through the middle, and then people wait on the sides, and then they go into the train. Japan's train system is the most efficient in the world, and understanding how to properly use the system without making a fool of yourself is key to playing your part in keeping it as efficient and punctual as possible. And by punctual, I mean we're talking about a train system that measures their delays in seconds. It's pretty insane, but I will say its efficiency is something that you will miss when you leave Japan. Number 8. Line up. In Japan, people love lining up for things. Maybe the real treasure was all the minutes we wasted along the way. Just kidding. In Japan, the culture of respect shows in their love for lines. People in Japan line up for everything, and you will often see orderly queues at restaurants as a sign of respect for the establishment. So an example of this that has gone viral online, Disneyland, where people queue up for hours before opening time just to get inside, flood all the rides, and line up for several hours there too, just to get on a single ride. We waited 2 hours in line for this ride, so here we go. If you haven't seen the photos and videos of the lines before the park opens, it's insane. When you encounter an escalator in Japan, primarily at train stations, there's etiquette for that too. You stand on the left side of the escalator, leaving the right side open for people who are walking. The left side applies in Tokyo, and the right side applies for Osaka and Kyoto. This rule applies even during peak rush hour, where there are tons of people flooding the station, everyone trying to use the escalator, but you will find everyone using the left side of the escalator to stand, and the line can go on for who knows how long, but no one will be standing on the right side in Tokyo, at least not a local. Number 7. Did you know that you could get stopped for a random police check, and if you don't have your passport, you can get in some serious trouble and get detained at a police station? Okay, that might sound dramatic, but that has happened to people. While your odds of being stopped and questioned about your passport are extremely slim, it is still required by immigration there for all foreigners to have their passport on them at all times. So it's best practice to do so. There are also other benefits of keeping your passport on you as well, such as tax-free shopping. In 2025, the tax-free process is that if you show your passport, you can get the consumption tax waived on your purchase in certain stores. This is usually marked on the store near the cash register to let you know that it is duty-free. However, not all stores do this, and some stores do have the alternative method where you pay the tax up front, and upon getting to the airport, you show your receipt to get the tax refunded to you. All of this prevents foreigners from coming into Japan, buying items, and reselling them within Japan for cheap. However, starting in 2026, the refund method will become the standard all over Japan, so it will take a little bit more work to get that duty-free. Carrying your passport around does tend to scare people, especially when traveling in certain countries. However, in Japan, I felt perfectly safe everywhere I went. Japan in and of itself is a very safe country, and I never felt that I was in any areas that were unsafe while going around Tokyo late at night, but then again, just still stay alert. Japan is widely considered to be one of the safest countries in the world, so that should ease any worries that you have, but again, just stay alert. That doesn't mean things don't happen. And keep your passport on you just in case. Number 6 is navigation, and let's start off by talking about getting into Japan. Everyone entering Japan is required to fill out the customs form, and this can be done on the Visit Japan site or the app. This will give you a QR code to use when you enter and makes the process fairly simple and straightforward. Once at the airport after clearing customs, you can go and get a welcome Suica card or an IC card, which is the main method of payment for almost everything in Japan. You can pay for the trains, buses, vending machines, grocery stores, almost everything. It's convenient to have and will make your time there much easier, so get one of these. You can get them almost anywhere that you would get train tickets and things like that, and there's usually a welcome Suica station at the airport itself after you exit security and you walk toward the train area. There is also an app for iPhone users if you want to use your phone as an IC card as well, so that's pretty convenient. However, having a physical card does make it a nice souvenir. Google Maps does work fairly well in Japan for getting you from place to place. The only thing is, in Tokyo, there are so many places stacked on top of each other. Like other buildings will have like 8 floors where each floor is a different thing, or many of the floors go underground, like for the train stations, for example. And that's where things get a little bit complicated even with Google Maps. But as far as getting to the right building or just generally getting from place to place or navigating the train stations and understanding which lines to take, etc., Google Maps handled it all very well. Japan's address system is also super confusing, and personally I haven't been able to make a whole lot of sense of it. So luckily, using Google Maps, we don't need to worry that much about the addresses itself. The other big thing is that if you want to take a taxi around, they do have regular taxi cabs that go around the city. However, there is a taxi service that they use there called Go, and there is an app for it. And you can use that to request a taxi from pretty much anywhere to anywhere, and it's basically like using Uber. While we were there, we did take a mix of regular taxis and Go taxis, and we learned a few things. It seemed like the regular taxis were a little bit older, whereas the Go app taxis seemed to be a little bit newer. The regular taxis also seem to be a little bit smaller and a little more dirty than the Go app taxis, which seemed generally, again, to be a little bit cleaner and a little bit bigger. So personally, I do prefer using the Go app to get taxis, even though it was a little bit more expensive than the regular ones. The other thing is that the regular taxis do have metered fares, so you won't really exactly know what the price is until you get to your destination. The Go taxis do work kind of like Uber, where you put in the app your location and where you're going to, and it gives you a fixed price. And you don't have to tip in Japan, so that fixed price is exactly what you pay. Also, one more thing on the taxis. In Japan, taxi doors are automatic. And this is confusing for a lot of people, and it's both rude and potentially dangerous for you to try to open and close the automatic door, as it can break it. So you definitely don't want to do that. When entering or exiting a taxi, the door on the rear left of the taxi will open automatically. This does not apply to the front left door or the rear right door. However, as the sidewalk is on the left side of the car, since they drive on the left side of the street there, generally you'll be only getting into the taxi from the left side of it. So unless unless you're using that front seat where you need to open the door yourself, then let the door open automatically both when you enter and when you exit the taxi. Moving on to number 5, mobile data in Japan. As I mentioned previously, you will be relying on Google Maps quite a bit and probably doing a lot of research while you're here in Japan trying to figure things out. So basically, having mobile data is a must. It's also super helpful to be able to use your phone to live translate menus or audio as needed, in addition to being able to look up places and navigate Google Maps. T-Mobile does have a plan with international data roaming, and a handful of people that I went with on this trip did have it and used it for the most part without any major issues or anything really notable. You also don't really have to do anything special if you have this to activate it. It makes it really convenient and straightforward. You just show up there and your phone will automatically connect and you're good to go. It did sometimes have some slower speeds though. Some people had Verizon's international plan and it seemed to have slightly faster speeds in Japan compared to T-Mobile, though both seemed fine overall. If your phone plan doesn't have international data roaming, then you still have some options. A cheap way of getting data is getting a SIM card for whatever country you're going to. In this case for Japan, using the Klook app, you are able to get a SIM card for around $18 for 7 days of unlimited data. That to me is super worth it. If you need a SIM, you can get a physical SIM card where you physically replace the card inside your phone when you travel, or an eSIM, which is an electronic or digital SIM, and that's the easier way to do it, assuming your phone supports eSIMs. Also, make sure your phone is unlocked and able to handle switching SIMs from your main carrier. This does seem to be a problem that's happened to a handful of people where they've gone overseas, they get to the airport, they change their SIM out or whatever, and they realize that their phone is locked and can't switch SIMs. I actually dealt with this while we were in Singapore, where a lady came up to me and asked for help in the airport to try to switch her SIM to an eSIM that she had purchased, but her phone wasn't taking it, and it appeared that her phone was locked and it wouldn't let her switch carriers. So just double check that before you go. Number 4, the saying is, in Japan, cash is king. This has been the saying in Japan for a long time, where the adoption of credit cards has been quite slow. However, in 2025, you can pay for most major restaurants, taxi rides, and shopping related things with credit cards. This doesn't mean that you won't need cash though. Rural areas, some street markets, some shrines and temples and things like that, some restaurants will still require cash, so definitely keep some cash on hand. You don't need to bring cash necessarily in advance, as there are a lot of ATMs all over the country in every train station and convenience store, though they are all operated by different banks, so some may or may not work for you. Some people in our group had trouble with the ATMs in the convenience stores, so we could only use the ones in the train station, so depending on your bank, be aware of that. And also, if you plan on playing as many gacha machines as I did, well, you'll need cash for that. Number 3, charging in Japan. Japan's outlets are similar to the US, and you can get away without any special converters or adapters. However, there are some differences that you'll need to know that could potentially damage or destroy your devices if used wrong. Japan's outlets are typically the A-type outlet with the 2 flat parallel prongs. A lot of outlets in Japan, however, don't have the grounding third prong. The voltage in Japan is 100 volts versus the US is 120 volts. So do check your device to make sure it's able to handle different voltages, which most are these days, especially phone chargers. The frequency is between 50 and 60 Hz, while the US standard is 60 Hz. Most chargers and devices, if they work in the US, should also work in Japan. However, again, the outlets in Japan don't have that third prong, so if you have that, then I would get an adapter for that. A lot of the newer hotels and things in Japan do have USB ports as well, so that's also something that's nice to see, but you will not find this in more rural areas. Okay, number 2 things that don't exist in Japan. First off, trash cans. Yeah, these just don't exist in Japan. At least it feels that way. You can often find a trash can at one of the many convenience stores like 7-Eleven, Lawson, or Family Mart, along with major malls. But there are very few trash cans in public places outside, and this can come as a shock. We brought a plastic bag around to hold our trash throughout the day whenever we weren't able to find a trash can, and it really came in handy because it's pretty tough. This is partly why you will notice that in Japan, the streets are so clean. There just isn't trash everywhere, like in nearly every other city on earth. The second thing that it's just non-existent are bathrooms. It can be quite hard to find a bathroom in Japan. Generally, if you're in a mall, a train station, or a touristy spot, there will be bathrooms, but walking around the city, it may be pretty hard to find. So the general advice here is to go whenever you get the chance, such as when you're having lunch or dinner or taking the train, and that will save you from having a lot of struggle later. A lot of places also have small gender-specific bathrooms. So for example, at the Sega Gigo arcades that we went to in Akihabara, I think 3 of the floors had bathrooms and 2 of the floors only had men's bathrooms and 1 had women's. So it was interesting. While in a cafe that I went to in Shinjuku when I was running around because I needed to go to the bathroom and couldn't find anywhere, I found this one cafe that was in this building that had 3 floors of bathrooms, and 2 of the floors were women's only bathrooms, whereas the top floor, whatever it was, had both men and women. So basically the thing to be aware of is that there are gender specific bathrooms sometimes on just like certain floors where just only one gender. The other thing to know about bathrooms in Japan is that a lot of them are fitted with bidets, and that could be quite a shocker for Westerners. Some of the bidets are so fancy that they'll automatically start playing music when you enter, automatically warm the seat, and they will wash and dry you without you having to do anything. It's quite a technological masterpiece. Though many people who have never used one before can be hesitant to use it, but it's quite nice. So definitely give it a shot. Coming in at number 1 is something that is quite shocking, and there's literally no paper towels or soap anywhere. Okay, this sounds bizarre, and it is, but finding paper towels is quite rare in Japan, primarily in public bathrooms. Hand dryers are also quite rare. So for such a clean country, why is this the case? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. While in Japan, culturally, most people are expected to bring their own hand towel around, and this is why they don't have towels or things in the bathrooms. Now, the other thing is not finding soap, and I know, this is wild. While in most major public bathrooms and restaurants, we did find soap, there were some rural bathrooms or some in train stations like one we went to in Tokyo Station where we did not find soap. And we did carry our own bottle of soap and hand sanitizer around for this specific reason. From my experience, it isn't as drastically lacking as the internet makes it out to be. However, it is something to keep in mind, and I would bring hand sanitizer around with you. Here are a few more bonus tips and things to know. Don't stick your chopsticks upright straight in a rice bowl, and don't pass your food or receive food with chopsticks. These are things reserved for funerals, and it's considered unlucky and rude in Japan. Use both your hands when giving or receiving something such as your room key or your credit card at a restaurant. I'll admit I forgot this while I was there, but I did notice that a lot of people were doing this when handing things to me or receiving things from me. Don't use the thumbs down sign. It's considered extremely offensive, and it's like giving the middle finger. Remember to shower before entering the onsen or the hot spring so that you come into the water clean. There is always an area to shower before going into the hot springs, and you're expected to use that. If you are going to Japan, especially in the warmer months like the summer, buy mosquito repellent in the pharmacy store as soon as you land. Mosquitoes in Japan are no joke, and while people in Japan are very kind and respectful, the mosquitoes are not. They bite hard, and you don't want to deal with mosquito bites ruining your trip. Also, an often forgotten one, bring the best and most comfortable walking shoes you possibly can. You can easily walk 20 or 30,000 steps per day while exploring Tokyo because it's a city designed for walking. So you will be getting your steps in. I bought a pair of On shoes specifically for this trip, and it really helped with the strain of walking so much each day. And now I wear them all the time. Don't stress. Japan is a very friendly country, and they are getting more and more tourism each and every year, and they are adapting. Japan used to be known as a country where if you didn't know Japanese, you wouldn't make it out of the airport. But now there's so much English everywhere, and from my experience, not knowing basically any Japanese at all my interactions with staff at restaurants, hotels, and stores were very friendly, and people knew enough to be able to help me or generally give me an idea of what I need to know. So the language barrier is not as much of a problem now. The only thing is that in some restaurants, the menus were exclusively in Japanese, but with the Google Translate app, you're able to live translate that stuff. That's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions or any tips for going to to Japan? Let me know in the comments section down below because I would love to hear that. And I will see you guys in the next one.